All right, let's do
Now,
this.
let's record a podcast.
Yep, for sure. Go.
All right.
Start. Start now.
Okay, well,
3, 2, 1, go.
as you know, Mark,
Go now.
I am going. Jeez Louise. As you
Now.
know, as you know, Mark,
Yes.
America loves a murder by the state. We just go bananas for
Uh,
cops shooting folks in the subways, people dying mysteriously in prison cells, or making that long walk down death row to get injected or electrocuted or firing squatted or what have you.
yeah, you are kind of known for it. And
Yeah, it's a thing
as
for
a
us.
as a non-American, I know this. So
Mm,
it has to be
yeah,
a thing you do if it's
it's
even, if it's
one of the things that, like, if you were to make a list of stuff about America, like, might show up on there. Um,
yeah.
yeah, just can't get enough of this kind of thing in the old US of
And
A.
stop me if I'm wrong here. By all means, rein me in.
Mm,
Would I be right or fair to say that while you love people kind of dying accidentally whilst under the care of the state, maybe you don't so much love accountability for it. So
yeah, no, not as big a fan as it turns out. We're
of
not really
justice being
into
seen to be done
right,
for
yeah.
said deaths.
No, yeah, because the fun is the
Well, yeah,
state deaths,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the fuck around bit, isn't it?
Exactly. So the finding out we're not super into. Um, but listen, over the past at least decade or so, many attempts at making it harder to do the whole death row thing have meant that there has been like a solid decrease in capital sentences actually being carried out. There's far fewer now than there once were.
Right. So if I commit a heinous act
Mhm.
in the States and I get sentenced to death,
Mhm.
how likely is it that I will see that death?
I mean, it would depend on what you did for one thing. But
And
the
what happens to me if I don't? If I get sentenced to life to death,
right,
but it
but
becomes obvious that I'm not actually going to get executed, what do I just?
you just sit there. Basically, that's the case for a lot of people in the United States, based on whether there's like moratoriums in certain places like California on death penalty, or as we'll talk about here, places where they have run out of the drug to do it, or,
Yeah,
for
sure.
various reasons, you will just stay sort of in whatever section of the jail they have walled off for you as solitary
Jesus.
confinement, or not solitary confinement, as death row.
Lifetime. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Solitary confinement for many is the case, but whatever area of the prison that is, that's where you will sort of stay in perpetuity until whatever you die in the jail, likely. And yeah, the sort of process has a lot to do with like making appeals,
Yeah.
and getting as many appeals
Stays
as you
of
possibly
execution.
can. Right,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. And for a lot of people on death row, that can go on for a long time, depending on what state you're in, all kinds of stuff about how many appeals you're allowed. Yeah, so there are places where you could easily just be there until you die. It's a life sentence,
What if
essentially.
what if I cry when
I
they come and
don't
they
know
rattle the
if they take
keys?
that into
What if I
consideration.
just cry
This
and
man is far too
absolutely,
sad
yeah, yeah, yeah. If I
to
really
execute.
don't want to die,
You
what if
know,
then? What about
yeah,
then?
maybe they'll reconsider. I'm
What if
not
I
sure.
apologize to everyone and I
Just
mean it? I
fucking so
really mean it.
sorry. Yeah.
Would that get me out of it?
No, that absolutely won't. As we'll talk about, we don't like letting people off death row, even if they are categorically innocent. So crying and saying I'm sorry is
What if I said
probably not
for
gonna
my
do it.
last meal I wanted to eat the electric chair?
That's good. Think you might have
Yeah,
found your caveat right there.
loophole there.
Loophole. Too smart for the criminal justice
Executioners
system.
hate him.
this this one trick.
Effectively, he evaded execution with this one simple trick.
Anyway,
Mm.
Mark, like I said, we don't do as many executions now Just checking to see what this dog is getting into.
Your background is blurred, and it looks to me as though he's shitting.
He's not shitting.
Okay.
He's very particular about where he shits, and it is not in my office, thankfully.
As he should be. He's got standards.
He does have standards. As do we. I keep on, this is such a silly aside, but I always think of him as like those people who go on vacation and like come back home like super constipated and stuff because they cannot go anywhere but their bathroom. That's him. Like he won't go on walks or anything like that. It's like it has to be in our backyard or one spot in our dining room, but it has
as
to be
you
the
will
backyard.
find, that is not an issue.
As I found the first time I met you, not an issue.
Is that a story we've told?
I don't know if we have or not. Maybe we save
we'll get
Mark
we'll
shitting for the intro. But for now, let me get back to talking about the death penalty. Sure. I have not made it through a paragraph of this yet.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. Fine.
This is what we do here. Listen, everybody here knows what they signed on for. But okay. So haven't executed a ton of people in the past decade or so.
So it's gone
because
down.
Of the various, it's definitely gone down by a lot from peak times at which we've done this. But just last night, South Carolina lethally injected their first inmate in 13 years.
Last
night, yes, Freddie Owens was executed. And it's hard not to feel like they were absolutely itching to do a state murder because the only reason they couldn't do it till now was that there was a shortage of the drugs to do it with, which we have talked about on here before. It's hard to get them. And B, once they got them, they rushed to take this guy out despite the fact that the witness whose testimony sent him to prison recanted and said that he actually wasn't present for the robbery at which the murder he was convicted for occurred and claimed he'd only blamed him because he was high on cocaine and made a deal with the cops.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's not great. And listen, that guy obviously is an unreliable witness one way or another. He either lied then or lied now. But whether or not that's true, that's the kind of thing that should cause some pause when it comes to executing a man. Obviously, we shouldn't be doing it at all, but if we're going to, we should be really damn sure that there is zero doubt on any level that he did the thing that he's accused of.
I can't help but agree. And
Seems basic.
That's the main kind of, for me, the biggest and most irrefutable argument against the death penalty.
Right.
Because
if even one person is dying while innocent, cut the whole thing off. I
mean, you referred to it just there as prison murder or that betrays a certain bias. That
it does. Yes, I am not pretending to be unbiased in any of this, Mark. This is
showing your hand a little.
Yeah,
there,
I'm not putting my journalism hat on here.
Okay.
We know what side I'm on in this whole thing. And to that end, we're not shy about executing people of dubious guilt or even provable innocence, like Cameron Todd Willingham, for example. And I can't remember if we've talked about him before. We totally should if we haven't, because this case is egregious. But he was convicted of killing his 3 sons based on total junk science, was more or less entirely cleared when the evidence was reevaluated, and the state of Ohio went ahead and killed him anyway in 2004. And the Innocence Project sheds lights on cases like these all the time. But I bring this one up specifically because in Willingham's case, like I said, it was discredited, debunked junk science that doomed him. And today I'm going to talk to you about one specific type of discredited, debunked, if still controversial and disputed, junk science that has ruined many lives and is now at the center of an impending execution in Texas next month. That of one Robert Roberson, accused of murdering his daughter Nikki via shaken baby syndrome.
Okay.
Now, I know I've mentioned this before, and I know that you know that this is considered to be junk science.
Yeah, sure.
As contentious. But let me tell you more about it.
Please.
I'm going to tell you about Robert, as well as some other folks who have been accused of this horrendous crime and why people are still being jailed for it, even though it's a very controversial crime.
Sorry for the continued asides, but I blew my kids' minds recently.
It's a terrible thing to say when talking about shaken baby syndrome. But
all right, the phrasing wasn't great, but I asked them to kind of guess when was the last execution by guillotine in France.
Ooh.
Do you know this?
Um, I feel
And they
like it may
guessed,
have come
they
up
guessed like
recently, like
1800s
18
or like
something. Yeah.
1700s. Do you
Yeah.
know this?
I don't know, but I know it's come up recently and that it is extremely recent.
Would you like to take a punt?
1967.
Oh, close. 1976.
Oh, I just had the numbers
You did.
backwards.
Yeah, you did. You did. It was either yeah, it was either 76 or 77. It was the same year that Star Wars was released. And it was still
Yeah, I don't
chopping
know.
off heads in France,
So crazy.
isn't it?
Especially because, like, like I'm pretty sure, yeah, like the UK got rid of death penalty in a lot earlier than that. I know I can't remember what the date was, but I think it's
But
earlier than that, right?
I must know.
Yeah, now you must know. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain it was earlier than that. Um and like we talked about like Portugal having ended death penalty in like the
64
1860s.
in the UK.
1964?
Still,
Oh yeah,
yep.
okay. I thought it was longer ago than that. I feel like functionally though, I think it had ended in the UK earlier than that, right?
Were they, yeah, these were the last guys.
Yeah, okay. The kind
Two
of like here
men,
where it's like we may
just a
be
couple of stragglers,
rolling
maybe those who'd
towards
sneaked in. Yeah.
right. There's people who are still getting executed, but we may be like rolling towards abolition of it. Um
Oh,
yeah,
is
so
that a fact? Is
it's
there a
not a
case for
fact
abolition?
per
But
se,
it's
but yeah, there is. I mean,
incremental progress.
yeah, I think that's the thing is like so many places have a lot of disputes over it, and that's
Yes.
why people don't get executed a whole lot at this
Yes.
point. That there is some sense that if it's not fully abolished, certainly in some states, and there already are states that there are states that are death penalty states, states that aren't, but that it is like functionally over because there's too many things holding up people from being executed.
That's another kind of facet of American law which fascinates me is
States' rights.
is the extent to which powers are devolved at state level.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you can get an abortion in one state but not another. You can get executed in one state but not another.
Right.
What is there a kind of a category of law that is devolved to state level, or
Yeah, there's
what?
federal or state laws. So there
Right,
are
right,
things
right,
which
right, right, right.
is interesting in and of itself because like say weed, for example, is
Yeah,
federally illegal.
yeah.
But so technically we shouldn't legally be able to have it anywhere.
Mm.
But still in states it we're able to choose that for ourselves. So it is
So
not
will
a
I be committing
clear
a crime
line.
if I buy some gummies in a shop in New York?
No, that's why it's complicated because federally, technically, yes, you're not allowed to do that. But in the state, it is legal to do so. It is very complicated, the difference between federal and state
See,
law.
that's your politics and your law in a nutshell. It's
Hmm.
fucked. I don't understand a word of it. It seems
Right.
so convoluted.
Yeah, it is. It very much is. And that's why we're constantly fighting about it, right? Like with
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
abortion laws and things like that is because, nothing is fully settled
Yeah.
as to, who is in control of things or whatever, unless like the Supreme Court rules one way or another. But yeah, there's so much wiggle room between what is state and federally allowed. It's very complicated. But no, you functionally cannot be in trouble for smoking weed in New Jersey or New York.
Okay.
Anyways,
I want that clipped out and recorded and
yeah,
sent to my
right.
wife.
So I'm sure that's what she's worried about is you getting arrested. Well,
Yes.
maybe, but I don't know if
Yeah,
it's for that.
in short. Anyway, sorry, Robert Roberson.
Yes, and for those who don't know what shaken baby syndrome is, obviously it's pretty much what it sounds like. The National Center on Shaken Baby Syndrome defines it thusly: shaken baby syndrome slash abusive head trauma, SBS slash AHT
The
for short,
what? The National Center for Shaken Baby Syndrome.
on shaken baby syndrome,
That's
like a
got to be a
research center.
fucking fun place to work,
Yeah, right.
isn't it?
Every day is just a giant downer.
Ooh,
Hard pass on that. But abusive head trauma is kind of the more commonly used word now instead
I
of
see.
shaken baby syndrome. But SBS slash AHT are the two acronyms.
Mm.
And it's a term to describe the constellation of signs and symptoms resulting from violent shaking, or shaking and impacting of the head of an infant or small child. The American Academy of Pediatrics describes SBS as a subset of AHT with injuries having the potential to result in death or permanent neurologic disability. This theory came about in 1971, proposed by one Norman Guthkelch, and essentially amounts to, it's not a great name, essentially amounts to baby whiplash.
Yeah.
And chief among the theory's tenets is that there are internal injuries like retinal bleeds or
Yeah.
intracranial bleeds with little to no external evidence of head trauma that can only happen in cases in which a baby has been shaken. There is no other possible cause.
So I I never shook either of my kids, right?
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. Um, there was one occasion. Owen cried a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? A great deal. And I remember vividly one night when I was carrying him and trying to soothe him and trying to tune it out and just trying to deal with it. And I just couldn't. And it was relentless. It seems like he'd been going for like 12 fucking hours.
Right.
And I didn't shake him as such, but I did kind of forcibly throw him is also the wrong word, but there was a bit of space between me and the bed, and I kind of yeeted
Just
him.
didn't gently put him
Yeah,
down.
I just
Like, right.
fucking cast him down.
Yeah. Which,
And
by
as
the
the
way,
second I had done that, I
yeah,
was
you're like, holy fuck, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the SBS, or the organization, not the SBS organization that we were just talking about, does say on their website that crying is the leading cause of this happening. Just
yeah,
babies crying and
yeah,
parents being like,
yeah,
shut up. So you're not
yeah.
alone in that, in that thing. But they do clarify that while they don't recommend these activities, it isn't caused by stuff like tossing a baby in the air, biking with
Oh,
your
good.
baby, a baby falling off a couch, or sudden stops in a car. People worry
Okay.
that stuff like what you did, just kind of like
Yeah,
not being gentle and tossing
yeah,
a child,
yeah.
is going to do that.
And I've seen like episodes of 24 Hours in Police Custody since then. Because
Right.
that's lodged in my memory now.
Yeah,
Like
that's clearly like,
really,
made a
really
huge
horrible.
impression on you.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I've seen fucking scumbags getting taken down for shaking the fuck out of their kids and killing them.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if I'll accidentally kill
Yeah.
Owen
Could
that
I
night.
have done that? No,
Yeah.
you could not have killed him
Plus, he was
by being a
he was a
little.
sturdy kid as well. So I did
Yeah.
the internal kind of calculations, even if it was subconsciously, and I thought the
He's going
padding
to
would
be
absorb
fine.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, a lot of parents do kind of things like that, and of
Mm,
course then are immediately like, dear God, I'm the
yeah,
worst
exactly
human on
that.
earth for
Yeah.
doing it.
Oh man.
So they say, these kinds of things, like I said, they don't recommend you do it, but tossing your baby is not going to give them shaken baby syndrome.
I would hope that
Um,
the Center for fucking Baby Shaking Studies would not recommend
yeah,
that I do
shaking
that.
babies. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine
But
if
they,
if that was the outcome. Huh.
right. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's all good. They explain that it results from violent shaking, even just for
Yeah.
a few seconds, and happens because babies have big heads in proportion to their bodies, weak neck muscles, and underdeveloped brains, and because obviously they're a lot smaller and weaker than an adult. And perhaps because of the controversy that has arisen over this in previous years, the website is also quick to point out that over 700 publications in more than 100 peer reviewed journals confirm the existence of SBS. And let me be clear, you can absolutely do great harm to a baby from shaking them violently. The concept of SBS on the whole is not necessarily junk science. Abusive head trauma occurs and is horrible and can lead to lifelong disabilities or death. And the website claims there are about 1,300 cases per year, but that I'm going to take with a grain of salt for reasons that we get into. But I want to say at the jump that I am not saying that shaking a baby won't maim or kill them. Don't shake your baby and think, hey, Corey said it's fine in the cold
Yeah.
open of the Jack of All Grays podcast.
Yeah. I kind of are
Getting
you
a little,
saying that?
throw your baby. It's fine. Don't
No,
worry about
I
it.
do go no go on.
Yeah,
I'll hold back.
yeah,
Go on,
don't
please do
worry. I'm
go on
gonna
because
build on this. What people
Is
are
this sounds
arguing,
like that might be what you're saying?
it's not what I'm saying. What
Okay,
people are arguing is junk science is that you can look at a specific set of injuries and say with absolute certainty that they are a
fine,
result of a
right.
baby
Okay.
having been abusively shaken and not from a host of other things, or that the injuries specifically used to make such a diagnosis are even attributable to shaking at all.
Mm,
And we'll get to that. Uh, but this is often the case when it comes to disputed science used in the courtroom. It's not that the thing can't occur, it's that
sure.
we're ascribing a set of ambiguous clues to a certain condition and saying with absolute certainty,
Yeah,
this caused that. And if you look at the list of signs and symptoms on the website, you can see right out the gate that these things certainly can be attributed to a lot of stuff. Symptoms like lethargy, decreased muscle tone, decreased appetite or poor feeding, vomiting, grab bruises on arms or chest, not smiling or vocalizing, trouble swallowing or breathing, seizures, inability to lift head, inability to focus eyes, or unequal sized pupils. They are not saying that these things are definitive and only attributable to SBS. But that's just to
yes.
give you an idea of how broad the signs are of
Sure,
this
sure, sure.
happening. So Robert Roberson's daughter Nikki died in January of 2002 after having spent the previous week sick with coughing, vomiting, and a fever. She had, and by the way, you're gonna see so much overlap with like Lucy Letby in these
It
cases.
had occurred to me.
Like,
Yes, it
yeah,
had occurred to me.
there's so much of it in here that I was like reading this, I was like, God damn. But she had been to the doctor twice in that time where she received prescriptions for drugs that, according to The Intercept, would not be prescribed for children of her age now, 22 years later. I don't know exactly what those drugs are, but another article referenced that amongst them were opioids.
Mm,
So, sick 2-year-old being given opioids. On January 30th, she fell out of bed, but she seemed like she was okay afterwards. The next day, however, Robertson found her unresponsive and rushed her to the hospital, where she unfortunately died within a day of arriving. Despite the very obvious other conditions affecting Nikki that could explain her death, medical professionals pronounced that the only possible explanation for her demise could be that she was shaken to death by her father. The jury in the case was not told that Nikki had suffered chronic illness since birth, that she was prescribed an opioid, or that she'd been suffering from breathing apnea from undiagnosed pneumonia, which is fucking insane. A
yes.
child dies in these circumstances and they are given none of the
No medical
facts.
history at all.
No history or even the current state of that child. Child had pneumonia at time of death.
Mm,
That seems important, you would think.
mm.
Um, and on top of that, jurors were instructed to pay attention to his demeanor and the fact that while being questioned, he didn't seem defensive, angry, or sad. My brother in Christ, Robert Roberson, has autism. He doesn't present things the way other people
Conventionally.
do, right? Like having flat affect is often a part of being autistic. So Robertson became the first person to be sentenced to death for the crime of shaken baby syndrome. Now, the state of Texas has something called the junk science writ, which is meant to prevent exactly this sort of thing. This gives people convicted due to disputed or discredited science the chance to be retried, which is great. Except, as The Intercept points out, the law is only as good as the criminal legal system tasked with applying it. And it's probably not going to shock you that Texas is not great at applying a law that puts fewer people in jail. Since its inception in 2013, people who have appealed using it have rarely received relief. Only 15 of the 74 applications that have been ruled upon.
And this was
And
in how long? When did this law come into pass?
2013.
Ah,
So in the
okay.
past decade, 74 of those applications have been ruled upon in a court. Only 15 of them have seen any form of relief as a result of those cases.
I'm interested.
And
Do you know what kinds of junk science the successful 15 appealed to?
I'm not sure.
Mm,
Obviously, this is one of them. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with things like blood splatter,
Uh-huh.
things like in fires, arson cases, like in the case of the other guy that I was talking about before, like gas patterns and stuff like that that
Right, right,
supposedly
right.
say where a fire started, things like that that like people ruled definitively on at the time, and we realize like that's not a thing. You can't tell
Mm.
that. um,
Not conclusively anyway.
right. What we do know is that 34% of those applications had come from people facing the death sentence, and not a single one of those had any of them receive any form of relief based on junk science. And it's worth noting that in 2012, Norman Guthkelch, the guy who came up with the shaken baby theory, disavowed using it in criminal prosecutions, going so far as to say, quote, "I'm going to bet that we are going to find in every, or at least the large majority of cases, that the child had another severe illness of some sort which was missed until too late."
Mm.
In 2015, he added, "I was against defining this thing as a crime or as a syndrome in the first instance. To go on and say every time you see it, it's a crime, it just became an easy way to get into jail." Three-quarters of those cases were procedurally barred, meaning they were dismissed without consideration because of various legal barriers to the process. So straight like bureaucracy stops a lot of cases from even being heard in the first place. People are sitting there on death row simply because some weird shit in the legal process happened and they
Sure.
couldn't get reviewed.
Yep.
So the writ sounds really cool and progressive on the surface, but a huge chunk of the people who attempt to use it don't even make it back into court. And the ones
And
that
is
do largely end up with their convictions and sentences upheld.
is that, do you think, one of the reasons it exists as a nod to progressiveness?
Right, yeah. Like, and I'm sure the people who came up with it had good
Mm.
intentions, I'm sure it came from progressive people. It probably came from activists who worked to get this into law. But yeah, I think certainly the way that it's deployed is sort of as a nod to like, look, people think Texas is really bloodthirsty,
Sure, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. But
actually,
look,
look at this
yeah, yeah,
law
yeah.
that we have. Like, we're totally fair about this. You can totally get shit reviewed, but it doesn't really work. So obviously, this was the case with Robertson. In court, his lawyers laid out the flaws of the SBS diagnosis and pointed out that Nikki had been very sick in the week before her death. Further, she had been given medicine that absolutely would have worsened her condition. And the detective who questioned him at the time, having since found out about his autism, was basically like, my investigation was influenced by my interpretations of the way he was acting. And we should definitely take that into account now. I would
Were the jury
not
informed of his autism?
this time, not the
Okay.
first time.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so he was like, you should take that into account. I would not say the same things about him now, knowing about him being autistic. And the court was like, meh, go die about it.
Mm.
And this has been their response to every single death penalty case brought before them under this writ. In Slate, formerly imprisoned writer John J. Lennon, who now works with Yale Law School's Prison Letters Project, wrote about a 31-year-old landscaper named Tom Imschweiler, who was serving a 5-year sentence for the shaking death of his 5-month-old son, Franklin. And that sentence may seem short, but it was part of a plea deal. He entered an Alford plea. Have you heard of an Alford plea?
I have not.
This is basically where you plead guilty, but you maintain your innocence. You're essentially saying, I didn't do it, but I also don't want to rot in jail. That's what an Alford plea is. And he did this because he also has a young daughter, and he wanted to make sure that he was out by the time she starts making like core memories about childhood, which is bleak as fuck, having to plead guilty to the death of your kid you didn't kill so that you can get out before your daughter doesn't remember you anymore.
See, I- I'm trying to work that through in my mind, and it
Mhm.
just doesn't fucking compute. How can that be a law that I can
Right.
say I did something even though I'm
Yeah,
saying I
even though
didn't do it just to get out
right,
earlier?
exactly.
Fuck,
Somebody's got to be
that's
punished for this thing. So
yeah,
there you
that's a
go.
joke law. That is a
That's
comedy
right.
law.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing it
Do I
exists
have to do this when
because,
I plead guilty? Do I have
yeah,
to
basically.
whoa wink?
Yeah. I mean, this has kept many people from, getting horrifyingly long sentences and stuff like that, including death penalty. Uh, so yay for that, but it's like horribly unfair, obviously, for people to have to do that in order
But
to.
just as a law, it makes no logical sense. It's
Right.
fallacious.
I mean, that's the thing is, yeah, it's basically you're saying I mean, it's kind of like a plea deal generally,
Yeah.
right? You're basically saying I know that if I were to sit in front of a jury and the prosecution gave their side of the story, they would convict me and I would have no control over the sentence. If I plead guilty, but say, I'm acknowledging I didn't do it, then they get their pound of flesh, but they don't put me in. I'm not at the mercy of what the jury says and the sentence that I receive as a result of that. That's fucked up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awfully. Dan,
is what it is.
I don't think there's a British equivalent of that.
Interesting. Yeah. Uh, much like the state laws and federal laws and everything, everything's very
Yeah, yeah,
complicated
yeah. Yeah,
here.
yeah. Do you think
Uh,
is that a symptom of America being so fucking huge? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back to sort of why we had a civil war here, things like that, right? Like we were expanding westward, uh, and basically deciding, do states have control over themselves or are we
Hmm.
centrally run? And the central issue of that, obviously, was that people wanted to expand slavery into the new territories that we were expanding into. And so this was the rights issue of the time was the government was saying no more. We're not the federal government was like, we're not expanding slavery. It can stay in the states where it already is, but anything new is not going to have enslaved people in it. And the South was like, fuck you, then we will leave. But when you get towards that, you realize like that was kind of one of our central
Was that really the core
arguments.
issue?
Yes, it very much was. Yeah. It's a pretty bananas thing to have at the center of some of the most important moments in your country's history.
Fuck me.
um, yeah, it's
Fuck me.
wild.
Like we can own people or I'm out.
Yeah, right. That was 100% what it was about.
Mm.
And now that gets like sort of whitewashed into it was about states' rights. But if you
Mm.
dig to states' rights to do what though? Like,
Exactly.
were they worried about weed
Yeah.
or was it owning people? Mm. And so, yeah, like this has been fraught from the early days of our country and how we were trying to sort of separate ourselves from monarchy and being like, we don't want anyone, like a single entity, to rule over us the way, England did before.
In a maybe not to the same scale because we did 4 episodes on Palestine. I'd
Sure.
quite like an episode about slavery, please.
Oh, yeah. I've thought about that.
Um,
I've thought like it would be interesting to talk about like racism in each of our countries
yes.
because like they're such different landscapes of it. Like there's plenty of racism in both countries, but how it developed
Yeah, sure.
completely different. So
Right.
yeah, we will get to
Maybe
that,
we'll have
but
that as
yeah,
our Christmas episode.
that's a great idea. Nice little Christmas episode on chattel slavery. That'll be
Nice.
really fun. But yes, we will talk about that. Because yeah, it's a huge part of our country. All that to say, though, is that states' rights have always been like a huge issue in America, and something that we're constantly fighting over. And that still to this day, there are areas that perpetually like threaten to secede because they're like, you won't let us do this thing. The US is tyrannical. We're gonna take Texas off and make it a country called like Lone Star or whatever, or we're gonna
But
take the Pacific Northwest and call it Cascadia or
I
whatever.
seem to remember asking this question like way back in the early days.
Mm,
What would happen if a state decided they
mm,
didn't want
mhm.
to be a
Yes,
state
and I
anymore? And
believe I just said the
it's not
government would
possible. You
crush
can't do
them.
it.
Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
military
yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
absolutely crush any attempt at resistance like that. Uh,
But even that's fucked up.
I don't know
I
what would
mean,
happen in Britain if like, well, I guess they just keep voting on it, don't they? Like
exactly. I mean,
Scotland
we
and
left the
Wales
EU and
and
we didn't get crushed. I mean,
well, no,
not
but that's different
externally.
because you weren't like the EU isn't a country. It's a, you know,
Well,
an
okay, but I mean,
alliance
reasoned
of
arguments
groups.
keep happening for Welsh
I think
independence or
I was going to
Scottish
say it's more
independence.
equivalent to Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales in
Yeah.
terms of, you know, seceding. Um, and I think probably Northern Ireland is your closest
Yes.
analog. And what
Uh-huh.
happened?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
did the Brits do when Northern Ireland tried to secede?
Mm.
Yeah, they militarily crushed them, uh, put up walls all over the cities, and horrifyingly oppressed the people who wanted to join the Republic and the North. So, yeah, the same thing would happen there.
Hmm. Much to
Anyways,
consider here.
much to consider. Yes, lots of cultural exchange and whatnot happening here. But that is not to say that anything over here makes sense. I just think in that case, we have very recent evidence that Britain does the exact same thing if people try to forcibly
Yeah.
take themselves out of the Union. But anyway, like Roberson's daughter, Nikki, Franklin had been sick and running a 104-degree fever in the week prior to his death. But his pediatrician had given the go ahead for his family to take him on a family vacation to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. They are from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is about 10 hours away. They rented a beach house along with his partner's mother, sister, and brother in law. And Tom woke up to the sound of Franklin whimpering in the middle of the night. And as probably every dad in modern history has done at some point, brought the kid down to the living room so he wouldn't wake everybody up.
Yep.
He then propped him up between two pillows and went to the kitchen to warm up some formula. When he returned moments later, Franklin was face down in one of the pillows. He immediately yelled for help, and his brother in law, who was a medic, performed CPR while his wife called the ambulance. He died a few days later in the hospital, where doctors found subdural and retinal hemorrhage and brain swelling, which are the things that they say are the signs of shaken baby syndrome. So they reasoned that the only way that that could have happened with no obvious external trauma was that Franklin had been shaken to death. Much like our old friend Lucy Letby, Tom
Mm.
was also incriminated by his personal writings. He wrote a letter to his wife in which he said, "Maybe the devil took my hand. Maybe I did hurt my son." And the DA was like, "Aha, well, there you have it, a confession." And, much like Letby, his explanation was that he'd written that letter in a state of absolute despair, believing that I somehow was responsible because that is all I was told from the moment I went into custody. Which is wild. Like, that is almost exactly the same thing that Lucy Letby said. And you see this when it comes to people who, like, write confessions under duress and things like that. And it's a thing that it's hard for me to relate to. Like, I think, you know, I have kind of a defiant personality and stuff like that. So I, like, can't imagine being coerced
Um,
into this.
I
But
don't
this
know
happens
where
all the time.
it does. I don't know where I saw it or where, possibly The Guardian, but uh, uh, I'm sure recently I've read that Letby claimed that a therapist had told her to kind of vent on paper. A therapist had told her to kind of
Totally makes sense. Right. Get it all out.
externalize. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, what she said was she was like, everyone was telling me I'd done this.
Mm.
And I started to like think maybe I
Role
had,
play
and I
almost.
was
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And I was dealing with that. And that's what he says here. And you see that with forced confessions all the time, that people get so worn down by the police interrogators telling them they did it. We know you did this. Stop lying to us. We know, we have evidence you did this. That they
Mm.
start sort of thinking like, oh my God, did I? Did I actually do this? And then they use that as absolute evidence that you did the thing that you wrote down. Like, oh, maybe I did this actually. So in both Tom's and Robert's cases, neither of them had any form of history of child abuse or abuse of anyone else for that matter. But who cares? The signs were there. But doctors, forensic pathologists, and other experts have been protesting this for at least a decade. Even ones who had once fervently championed the SBS theory, like Jonathan Arden, for example, who now provides expert testimony that helps to prevent such conviction. In one case in Minnesota, for example, he testified that a, quote, thin layer of old blood on the surface of the baby's brain was proof that the injury had occurred before the child had been left alone with his father. So the thing that the courts had used to say that SBS were there were completely disproven by this bit
Mm.
of evidence. It simply was impossible for it to have been the case. And that's the kind of testimony that isn't usually heard in these kinds of cases. Other things that these people have said can present as SBS include diseases, genetic conditions, and accidents, which seems obvious. Like, think about the head trauma that killed Sonny Bono or Natasha Richardson, right? Like, they seemed fine.
Yes.
And then
Liam
later,
Neeson's wife.
yeah, Natasha Richardson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she seemed fine. And then later, like 24 hours later, just dropped dead.
Bonk. Yeah.
Yep. And we know this happens to adults, so why wouldn't that be the case with babies? Just like from a logical standpoint, they're small adults. So the same kinds of things should probably be able to happen to them. Further, not only do experts now point out that there are many exceptions to what they've considered a rule with SBS, they assert that shaking babies doesn't actually produce the conditions it's been said to produce: bleeding on the surface of the brain, bleeding in the back of the eye, and brain swelling. That's a huge revelation, because that's the trifecta right there. Those are the three things that have always been like, if those are present, for sure it's SBS. And now these experts are like, you cannot do that by shaking a baby. They did shaking studies on pigs, which, if you watch Mythbusters, you know, are basically our closest analog to humans when it comes to trying to test something. And they were unable to cause severe brain and eye injuries by shaking.
They did that on Mythbusters.
Not that, no, but on Mythbusters,
Oh,
whenever they needed like a human analog for a
all right.
test
I thought
that they
that guy
clearly
with the
couldn't
hat
use.
and the beard shaking the
Yeah,
fuck out of a little pig.
shaking a pig. No, but they always used pigs whenever they needed something that was similar to a
Fine,
human
fine,
to
fine.
do
Yeah.
tests. But yeah, so they researched how much force an adult can generate by shaking and found it highly unlikely that someone could generate enough force to cause lethal bleeding and swelling. Like I said, there are plenty of horrible things that can happen when you shake a baby, but those aren't among them. Big yikes. Neuropathologist John, or it might be Jan Lestma, one of the theory's most ardent propagators, later said that he was wrong, and that, quote, the original papers that espoused shaken baby were basically opinion papers with essentially no science applied to them. And Dr. George Nichols, who was state medical examiner of Kentucky, said in 1997, quote, shaken baby syndrome is a belief system rather than an
Sure.
exercise in modern day science.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, whew, what a takedown. Even faced with this, medical experts and practitioners of the law are loath to give up on SBS. Tufts School of Medicine professor and American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Child Abuse Neglect member Robert Sagi acknowledged that, yeah, sure, there are wrongful convictions, but he said he wasn't sure how that, quote, has any relevance to the issue of abusive head trauma.
Tough School of Medicine.
Tufts, Tufts.
Okay, all right, all right.
It's the School of Medicine Hard Knocks.
Yeah, anesthesia. Nah, we don't do that.
He went on to say, quote, as a doctor and experienced child abuse pediatrician, I know that abusive head trauma exists. I have cared for injured children, some of whom died. I have met with parents who were deep in misery as the realization of what they had done seeped in. And yeah, that is horrible and traumatic, but also that's a real you can't make a tomlet without breaking a few Gregs sort of mentality. Like, it's fine to send some innocent folks to jail because the thing they're being accused of does
Sure.
exist.
Yeah.
It's like saying it's fine to give someone the death penalty for being a serial killer, even if they didn't do it, because, hey, Ed Kemper
Serial
does
killers
exist.
exist. Yeah.
So what can you do?
Yeah.
That's not how the law works, but that's basically how it's applied in SBS cases. And this, of course, goes back to a couple things, including one we've talked about time and time again when it comes to people being wrongfully convicted or accused of stuff, whether it's, you know, maybe Lucy Letby or the Dingo Lady or even the McDonald's hot coffee lady. It is way easier to think, well, these people were particularly dangerous or abusive or incompetent, and that's why these awful things happened to them, than it is to accept that the universe is cold and uncaring and this shit could happen to you too. We need to believe these are extraordinary circumstances that only happen to the worst people in society, and we'll straight up murder innocent folks to preserve that false sense of security.
Mm.
We also put a lot of trust in the criminal justice system that they're going to get things right and that they wouldn't, whether accidentally or maliciously, present something as science that isn't. We have sort of a TV view of what goes on in the courtroom. Forensic science is almost magic on procedurals. And with enough fancy equipment, you're always going to be able to drill down on a cause.
Mm.
Or if you can't, well, that's where profiling comes in. You can tell by the type of person, which of course was one of the things that was problematic in Roberson's case. They expected him to act a certain way, but he was autistic and his affect wasn't the same as that of a neurotypical person. Imagine how many times this has happened to people who are neurodivergent or who have various disabilities. Not to mention the obvious, which is, according to the medical news website Stat, quote, when it comes to identifying child abuse, racial and socioeconomic biases are rampant. Black children are more likely to be identified as victims of abuse and are more likely to receive a skeletal survey compared to white children. And children with public health insurance were more likely to be reported to CPS compared to children with private insurance. So if you're poor or black or both, you are far more likely to end up charged with child abuse than if
Yeah,
you're white.
it was chilling as fuck and sticks out in my mind that one episode where you profiled me based on stuff I'd said on the cast, as
Right.
somebody who could probably have killed his wife.
Yeah, right,
Whereas
exactly.
I'm a great bunch of lads, everybody knows this, but
Right.
in
You
a
would never
courtroom,
do such a thing, but
if you were
would you?
to present some of my peccadillos
Right,
in a court
yeah.
of law,
It's easy to make you look guilty as fuck.
mm,
And that's you, a middle class white man.
yep,
The the threshold is so much lower if you don't fall into any of those categories,
mm,
which obviously is a huge portion of this. A lot of the cases that get the most attention are of white men accused of this, when there are plenty of Black and Latino and Indigenous men and women who have cases like this that nobody's talking about.
yes.
So we're now starting to see SBS convictions overturned, but not nearly at the rate we should be. Only about 3% have been overturned at this point. So we can be absolutely certain that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people languishing in jails, their children being raised without them because an unthinkable tragedy befell them and they got blamed for it.
Did Robertson go to the chair? Did he get
It's
executed?
October
Oh,
that he's supposed to be executed, and there's really, yeah, there's no indication that that will not happen. It is very likely he will be executed. Love, love, love America.
yeah,
Very.
bummed out a little by that.
Actually, you know
Won't
what? To
lie.
that end, one of the things that I did want to say here is that, like I said, it's October that this guy is supposed to be put to death. So we have
Right,
time,
next
dear
week.
Jack of all graves friends. I think October 17th. So like about a
Okay.
month, right? We have time. Write some letters, make some calls, and like get your friends to it. Have a party where you write letters and make calls. Whatever the case may be, say something. Go and do something. If you've been sitting here listening to this podcast, as for years we've talked about stuff that you have no ability to change, like climate change and whatever else, right here, go say something. We can do this. Sign a petition, whatever else. At least, we don't have to sit and just let this one go. Say something. Go, let's work on trying to get Robert Roberson out of this jam.
I'm just checking if there is a petition.
I'm sure there probably is. I would imagine maybe Innocence Project, something of that nature.
There is indeed. Yes, there is
Yeah,
indeed.
there you go. It base level. Look at that. Mark took 2 seconds and found a petition. Go sign that, whatever the case may be. If there's one positive thing we have here, here's one way that we can actually be involved in this case.
I'm doing it right now.
Hey, atta boy. Make yourself heard. I love that.
Done.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thank you, Mark. You take us in?
Yes, by all means. Hi, hello.
Hello.
Difficult to sound upbeat after that, unfortunately.
At least there's a theme tune in between the cold open and this.
Uh, do we still have the same theme tune?
We do have the same theme tune. There was a brief point where it was like when we started the cast and we didn't have like quotes from a bunch of episodes, there was a different theme tune because it only had quotes from like our first ep and maybe some of our like conversations we had outside of the podcast.
Yeah.
And then when we had enough, I changed it and it has been that for like 3 years.
I wonder, is it still appropriate, that theme tune?
I, what do you mean?
Well, it feels a little frivolous and a little jarring to maybe after that conversation to have like I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, it's a valid point. And sometimes I don't use it for things if
Oh,
I'm like
okay,
this,
good, good, good,
there have
good.
been
Okay,
times
good.
I've used discernment to be like, this feels like maybe
Not
we
this week.
don't.
Sorry,
But it
Robbie. You
yeah, but it does serve as sort of like we talk about a lot of dark things in the beginning, so it does
Yeah,
serve as like a
it's a
little
palate
moment to
cleanser.
collect yourself
Yes. Okay.
before all of a sudden we're like talking about something goofy, you know?
Yeah, fair enough.
Here's
Fair
a
enough.
should I have like a sad theme to
Well,
put in it?
look,
I'm gonna put like the Twin Peaks theme in that gap or something.
uh EastEnders, yeah, the
Mm,
greatest show on British television, an
sure.
institution. Whenever there's a super consequential moment, typically a beloved character death,
Hmm.
they'll play like a special version of the theme. It's called
Ooh.
Julia's theme.
Hmm.
Um, I believe named for the woman who wrote it. And it always hits like a ton of bricks, man.
Nice.
Whenever a character gets Julia's themed, often, somebody will be driving off out of Albert Square in the back of a taxi
Mm.
with a Rain Street window or, a funeral procession. Uh, but yeah, when they use Julia's theme very sparingly, you don't get Julia's theme very often.
Yeah.
But when they do, you're always left in stunned silence. It's fucking great.
I love the concept. I don't think you know what? I was gonna say, I don't think you could pull that off here because people would immediately laugh if there was suddenly serious music. But then again, maybe that helps. Maybe again, it's part of
What
the
would we use? I don't know.
breaking of the tension.
I wonder if I could knock us up like another version of Candle in the Wind.
Ooh, I like that. That feels appropriate,
Yeah. I won't do it, obviously,
right?
but
Clearly,
if we were to have a Julia's theme,
it would be Candle in
it
the
would
Wind.
it would be me writing a bespoke version of Candle in the Wind.
I want to hear it. I would very much like to hear
We'll
that
see.
song.
Maybe I'll pen it on the plane.
You can when we go to karaoke, you can put on Candle in the Wind, but sing your Joag version.
Oh, it's a brilliant idea.
There it is, We've had a lot of conversations, me and my friends, about like what will we do at karaoke.
Mm,
I have not. I used to karaoke all the time, right?
I
But
know.
I have not in basically like 5 years now, which makes me a little nervous. I'm like out of practice. Like, do I do an old standby just because I know my old songs? Do I bring in something new? Part of me thinks, points to anyone who does like something horror themed, like A, from a horror movie, or B,
Sure.
by a horror band, or C, with spooky
Yeah.
like lyrics,
But these places have everything, don't they?
They
They have like
do, yeah. In fact,
everything.
the place has their whole catalog searchable on their website that we're going to. So you can like
Beautiful.
look ahead of time and see,
Nice.
do they have my song? But yeah, living in the future, now everything is on there. Um, but that, of course, that is to say, we are, what'd you figure out, like 72 hours out from you being on
In
your way
72
here?
hours, I'll be wondering if it's even worth going to sleep. I'll either be asleep or wondering if I should even fucking bother.
Right, yeah. It's
But see,
Christmas Eve in the Lewis
I,
household.
I don't want to arrive all fucked up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know
It's
what I
that
mean? So
delicate balance,
yeah,
especially because coming this way sucks. It's
yeah.
fine going to the UK. Coming this way,
So I've got to be
rough.
strategic
Hmm.
somehow.
Do you have a plan?
Oh, medication. is the plan. But the
Well, I think
plan
I've
is
said this
meds.
I've said this before, and this probably works better for you than me, but like the first time that I went on an overseas flight was to Belfast.
Right.
And I knew that I would be very anxious because you know me, I do not like flying. I do it all the
Yeah.
time, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Um
Luckily, I love it, as you know. I
yeah,
adore
you
flying. It's
enjoy
great.
flying.
Yeah.
And so my thought process was like, so my flight, we had to leave at like 4 a.m. from the school to get to LAX. And so I was like, I'm not gonna go to bed, so I'll be like super, super tired. And that'll be very helpful. And then I'm going to also take sleeping meds. So
Mm.
when I get on that plane, I'm going to have been awake for like, 24 hours and be on sleeping pills, and I will pass the fuck out and wake up in Northern
That's
Ireland.
kind of my plan. That's kind of where my
Right.
head is at.
Seems like a totally reasonable plan, except the way my anxiety is set up, I powered through that shit. And so I was awake the entire flight and then got to Northern Ireland and it was like 7:30 in the morning. So I had to be
Oh,
awake an entire day, having not
Christ.
slept for 2 days and on sleeping pills. Oh my God, I just remember like it felt like I was like having an out of body experience. Like I
Yeah,
was
sure, sure,
walking
sure.
next to me all day. Like I could
Wow.
not function.
Well, I'm certain I'll be able to sleep on the plane because I'm
Yeah,
not an
you don't
anxious
have this
flyer.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm anxious in a lot of other areas, but a plane is not one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
pretty
just always
right.
tell this to people who like whenever I see people who are like, oh, I'm going on a plane for the first time or the first time
Mm.
in forever and I'm terrified of flying, I'm like, let me tell you a thing you're gonna think is a good idea. It is it's actually not. Don't do that. But for someone like you, it's fine.
No, yeah, I think that's the plan. I'll maybe have a little nappy nap,
Love that.
like early evening,
Hmm.
uh, and then power through, smash a downer before I get on the plane,
Sure.
and hopefully be bright as a button
Yeah, because you'll be getting
when
here
I
at like
meet you in NJ.
11:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
So yeah, hopefully you'll be fresh as a daisy
yeah.
when you arrive here, ready for me to immediately whisk you away on adventures. I keep thinking that I'm like, oh, am I planning too many things? Am I planning too many things? But like compared to, I know what your vacations are normally like, and I know that your wife plans much harder and with much
Yes,
less downtime than I do. So I'm
yes,
like, it's you're
yes.
gonna be fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know this isn't. I know that there won't be, smelling the roses.
It's gonna be a blast. What do you think? Like, do you have concerns? Do you have questions as you
Oh,
make your way
this is a great, great, great
to
question.
America for the first time in literally 30 years?
Um, I am kind of, if anything, I I'm very curious to see just how much mileage my social battery has in it,
Oh, yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
Yep.
Because I can't because we know I like to leave.
You are, yeah, you're a lever. We have
Leaving is the
discussed
greatest.
this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I simply will not be able to do this.
Right. Well, I don't know. I have a different like perspective, and I think it's because I am friends with a lot of, if not levers, sort of rechargers.
Yeah, sure.
And I think
Do you have like
that,
a quiet spot for me?
well, that's the thing. It's like we have spots. Like if everybody is hanging out outside, you can go inside
Yeah.
and like, you know, go sit in your bedroom for the week and chill
Ah,
out and recharge or whatever. And nobody's gonna be like that asshole.
good. Okay.
Yeah. So that yeah, but I do get that. Like the social battery
Hmm.
is a question for sure.
And that's honestly my only concern. Other than
That's
that,
your only
fucking
concern.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Bring it all on, and I'll be
Is
fine.
there
I'll be better than fine. It's gonna be amazing.
is there anything you're looking forward to in particular? Obviously with meeting our listeners and things like that, you're very
Yeah,
excited
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But like, US things that you've got like an eye towards.
Well, so I've got to I want to go to CVS. You know this.
I do know this, and it's here's my thing. Um, I will take you to CVS. We will buy
Yes.
your melatonin at Glenridge Pharmacy, my place of choice, because I was looking up the reviews of the local CVSs around here just to,
Right.
see what's the best one to take you to. And everyone hates the CVS's in
Oh,
this
I don't care
area.
about
They
that.
all have like 2 stars. But I want you to get your meds somewhere nice. But we will go into a CVS and maybe you can buy some like candy or
Yeah,
something amidst the
yeah,
Halloween decorations and that weird, sweet plastic smell that you get inside of a CVS, you know?
yeah. I want that. I want to experience
Yeah,
that.
to experience
Now,
it. Like the terribleness of it is probably part of the experience.
exactly. I want warts and all. I want it all. I
Yeah.
want it all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, something I need to ask you.
Hmm.
How how far will we be
Uh,
from the 78th precinct in Brooklyn?
the 78th precinct in
Yes.
Brooklyn.
Yes.
But what is at the 78th precinct?
It's where they filmed Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I was wondering if that was going to be the case.
Yes.
That's fascinating. I did not know that.
Obviously, I couldn't give us stuff, but Owen would
Oh, I
dearly
would
love a
love that.
photo.
Yeah, absolutely. I freaking love Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
But I don't think we will reach Prospect Heights, unfortunately.
Okay. What else? What else? What else? We won't get the chance to go to Rikers Island, will we?
Yeah,
Can
no,
you
I
go to that?
don't.
Is it like Alcatraz?
No,
Or
because
is
the
it
Alcatraz is shut down.
yeah,
And Rikers, I think, is still an
still a
operational
jail?
prison.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you can see it though. I think you can see it from. I think it's on the Hudson,
That would be
if I'm
good
not mistaken. You
if I could get a
can
look at it.
wave at Rikers.
Excellent. Let me see. I hope I would imagine we'll get like a boat and see the statue.
We will do that. I
Okay.
was kind of keeping that. Oh, Rikers actually on the East River. But and so in fact we might actually see it from the boat. I was kind of keeping that on the
Excellent.
DL, and maybe people won't
Okay.
listen to this beforehand and know, but our tour is going to start with the Staten Island Ferry.
Magical.
So get to
Tell
see the
me,
statue,
do
get to
they
see all that stuff.
can you go in it? Can you go up her, as it were?
Wish you didn't say it that way. Yes, it is at various times forbidden to go up her. But I don't know if it's closed or open right now. We won't like
I'm not saying
go
I
there.
wanna. I'm
Yeah,
just curious,
just
just for
yeah. I went in when I was a kid, but yeah, you can go inside of there. You take a ferry to the island, the Liberty Island
of
in
course.
New Jersey, because the
Was it
Statue of
called Liberty
Liberty
Island
is in New
before
Jersey.
the statue
No,
was erected? No, I thought not.
no, it was not. It was not called that. But this is one thing that, New Jerseyans will get on you about. The Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island are both in New Jersey, not New York.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I imagine,
Mhm.
well, I mean, like is probably the wrong word, but I'd like to at least breeze past the site of the atrocity.
Oh, I was like the atrocity. What's the atrocity?
The
Yeah,
one that,
you know the one. We
yeah.
will indeed
Okay, good.
go and see the memorial pools and all of that kind of stuff where that happened. You get to
Good.
see the weird 9/11 gift shop that is over there. It is the
Oh,
most bizarre thing on the planet that you can go and buy 9/11 souvenirs.
oh, I didn't know that. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah, you're
now
gonna
it's a
love it.
must. Well,
It's
like a t-shirt.
like you can get t-shirts, bags, like I'm fairly certain they have like weird shit like shot glasses. Like it's a little kiosk or whatever,
Oh,
and you can buy your 9/11 souvenirs, and it's super weird. Like they don't say 9/11. Well, I mean, I think they do have like 9/11 never forget, or whatever. They're
surely.
not like 9/11 championship,
Like
woo!
an
But
eagle.
like, yeah, but they very much have t-shirts, sweatshirts, postcards, like all of that kind of stuff from
Oh
the
man.
memorial of
You will help me
9/11.
make good choices, won't you?
Listen,
Because
I can only do so much.
someone given to my, with my impulsive nature, this could be dangerous.
Well, it's a weird thing when you're visiting a place like that because it's New York City. So people are like largely just going about their
Of
day
course.
or whatever. Like it is a working
Of
area.
course.
There is a
Hey,
new World
yeah.
Trade Center, all this stuff. So it's this weird, bizarre mix of people who are just at work or passing through to get from point A to point B. People who are there to like deeply
Sure.
feel this moment, the
Experience,
memorials, and then like
connect.
kitsch like
Yeah. Yeah.
the souvenir stand where they have to monetize this
Somehow, yeah.
tragedy, which, like, I guess if you think about it, this is the case that like I'm sure at Pearl Harbor you can get postcards and shit like that, like, and I have on my shelf behind me, I have a mug from
Mm.
the sixth floor museum, which is where JFK was shot from. Like, you know, like you have this kind of stuff. I think because this is such like a fresh, at least for someone like our age,
Yeah.
this feels like a fresh thing, and it's weird to have like tourist stuff around it. uh but yeah, they're full grown adults who were not alive when this happened, so
And am I am I right in saying that they would be walking on like unrecovered human remains?
I don't think so. I think they found
Bits, maybe.
everybody. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's bits of things that weren't recovered. You know, I no more so, less so than being in a graveyard,
Yeah,
I would
yeah, sure,
say.
sure, sure,
You
sure,
know,
sure. Okay,
there's
okay,
not going to
okay.
be that many bits of people underneath there, and like, so a good chunk of that space, like they like it's this big, deep memorial pool thing. It's very hard to get a grasp of like the size of it until you actually see this. But yeah, it's, you know, they've, where the buildings are has been made into something else.
Superb. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a
that's a big
weird
one.
spot. Hmm.
And listen, I don't say this lightly, right? But
Mm.
the fact that you've studied and got yourself accredited as a tour guide, a star-rated tour guide, no
A
less.
star-rated tour guide. I know I haven't even
I
said that on here yet. I don't think that.
Oh well, please don't let me steal your thunder. Go for it. Just
Yeah,
please
I
announce your news.
I went on Wednesday, somewhere in there, went into the city, went to a testing center, sat down, took the New York sightseeing guide exam, and received 91% on it. So I get a little star next to my name as one of the cream of the crop
That's
of
fucking
people you could
brilliant.
take a tour from.
Do you do you plan on doing it afterwards? Do you plan on doing it again? Because
It's
you
a
could.
good question. Because yeah, I mean, I like, it's been my dream since I was little to be a tour guide.
Really?
Yeah, I have always wanted to be a tour guide. And when I lived in Anaheim, I was a museum docent, a volunteer museum docent, and fucking loved it.
Hmm.
And so
That
having,
tracks.
yeah, right, it like completely makes sense with my
Yeah.
personality. Um, and like having been a professor and all this kind of stuff, like these are there, I'm just always doing tour guide things in non-tour guide ways.
Yeah.
And so now that I have a license to do it, like my friend who's a tour guide in Philadelphia, he messaged me and he was like, my company actually has a New York branch if you want to like see if they have any openings or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, that is interesting. So who knows? Maybe this is the start of a career change.
And I know that you're not kidding either.
Oh no, 100% not kidding. Would absolutely do it. Presented with the right opportunity. Fuck yeah,
Sure.
that is my dream. It is
Mm.
genuinely. If like you're to ask like what is, like, if you could only do one job for the rest of your life and that's it, you will never get to change careers, that's your thing. Tour guide, easily.
I can't wait.
I'm excited about it. I'm, you know, obviously a little bit of nerves about it,
Mm.
but it's obviously friends, so I don't have to be nervous.
Yeah.
You know, I might have to like look at my little script a little bit. I won't be completely off book
Yeah.
of our travels and everything, but I got myself a cool little iPad case. So I can carry it around and show pictures of things and whatnot and keep my notes on there. It's gonna be
Why
beautiful.
don't you at the start uh just tell everyone that one of the things you're going to tell us will be bullshit, and then at the end we have to guess which
Guess
one
which
of the
thing is
things was
bullshit.
bullshit. Yeah.
I kind of love that. I'm gonna work on
You don't
that.
have to
Thank
do
you.
it. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
give that to you if you want it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Like the idea. But you know, these are the things that we're thinking about as this week approaches, which is just huge. It's such an exciting
Oh, it's
time for
seismic. It's
us. It's
seismic.
seismic. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
And as I said to Corey before we started recording, we can then stop talking about it. So for those of you who aren't invested at all and couldn't give a
Right.
shit,
Like, oh, why do they keep
don't
going
worry,
about
it'll be
this?
over it'll be over soon.
I mean, there will probably be at least one episode where we reflect upon it because
Yeah.
we're going to
Oh,
be
and
all
there'll be
hyped up
and there will be
afterwards.
videos.
And there will be videos. I'm excited about that too. You got a new camera.
Bought myself a new little camera. See, one thing about me, right? I'm gonna share something here. Little
mm,
thing about me. I like to have new things,
you do. That is a thing
right?
you are, yeah, into.
Uh, frequently, like a semi-frequent influx of new things. That's something that I enjoy. I think it's neat.
Yeah.
Um, so I
I
took
feel
up.
like I get the flack for being impulsive because if you like show me a food on the TV, I need to eat it immediately. But like, I came there with my little Osmo Pocket and like you were
Yeah.
like, I want that. And
Oh, and
your impulses are bigger than mine.
it was that camera that you showed me. I got the next version of that. And it
Yeah.
was hands
It's
down one of the best things
clearly,
I've ever bought. It's fucking
yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's worked out
So I got
pretty
myself,
nicely.
yep. So I got myself a new little action camera for it, and I'm looking forward to playing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And gonna practice. I'm gonna get some nice editing practice from it. And I
Yes.
cannot wait to record with Anna and Steve. I just cannot wait.
Yes. It's going to be so much fun. Really
Yeah.
stoked on that. Mark will be providing us with the JOAG cold open
Uh-huh.
portion, and then
Yep.
we will band together, talk about the Jaws series, and
Yep.
very excited to share that 200th episode with all of you when it occurs. So
Turned out nicely.
it's
Yeah.
all
It's
happening
all happening.
this
Yes.
week in just a few short days. And as a result, I almost have a bathroom too. So things are really, really coming along.
Awesome.
Should
Hey,
we
who'd have
talk
thought,
about?
eh?
Oh,
5 years ago, 4 years
I
ago,
know,
four
right?
years ago, that this is where it
Yeah,
would
four
lead.
years ago. That this is where we'd be. Paul Rudd GIF here.
I don't know what that means, but yes.
The hot ones. They have
Oh,
him
never seen. Oh,
going,
okay,
look at
yes, never seen
us.
it.
You know,
It's fucking mad that you insist on saying GIF. I hate it.
it's what it's called, and I'm not
The
going to change it
fuck
out of
it
peer
is.
pressure.
What does the G stand for?
It doesn't matter what it stands for because the person who
How the fuck?
created the whole thing said it's GIF. And therefore I don't change it simply because Zoomers decided that it's
Once
with a soft G,
when a
a
piece of
hard G.
art leaves its creator, it belongs to the world. I don't give a fuck what he says. Graphics
Well,
is the first word of
but
that
listen,
acronym, and it begins with a G.
like I've said, I started using this before this was a thing everyone talked about.
You
I
can
was,
change though. I
but
won't. Nobody
why?
will.
There's nothing
Nobody
wrong with
will.
saying it correctly.
Oh God, I
Like
fucking
everyone
hurts.
else says it wrong. I've been saying it my whole life. Why would I change it?
Mind, listen. I feel the same way about the word oxymoron.
Except that's categorically wrong. But
Bullshit. I won't move a fucking inch on how that word is pronounced.
well, there you go.
Not one
We'll have
inch
to sit with
from my
it.
cold dead hands.
Yeah, but I come from programmer world, and so then these things got into everybody else's hands, and
All
I'm
right.
expected to change because the kids read it wrong. Nah, not gonna
All right.
happen.
Do you come from the graphic design world?
Okay, you're acting like there are no soft G's in the world. This is what he
No,
decided. He
I'm not.
spelled it
I'm
out
not.
this
Am I? I'm
way
not. I'm saying
specifically to make the name sound like GIF. He could have called it something else, but he wanted it to be GIF.
how does the G at the start of the word graphic sound?
That's not the point. The point
It's very
is
much is
it
though.
was, but it isn't because the acronym was made to make the sound GIF. You're not going to sway me on this.
No, it
Simply not going to
and look,
happen.
hey, strong beliefs, strongly held. That's what me and you're all about.
It's
And yet
true.
we find a way. We find a way to,
We
to remain friends
we
in the face of
persist.
this. Yes.
Indeed. Let's start our what we watch section here with some strong beliefs we've been fighting about for
Oh,
the
shall
past two
we? Hey,
years.
yo.
Finally, bringing my blood pressure
Uh,
down a little bit.
all right. Now let me just kind of try and navigate my way through this.
Okay.
Um, which was the one of the latter two Screams that had the shrine? Was that 6 or 5?
6.
I maintain that that was fucking obnoxious,
Right.
right?
That's fair. That's fair. My whole thing was not that I didn't like that you don't like this movie. It was that you decided the whole franchise was shit
But
because you didn't like one movie.
but the opening sequence of Scream 4, when there are like three different
Yeah.
fucking stab movies, one after
Right.
another, was fucking brilliant,
It was, right?
right?
I remember
And
seeing it like in the theater and, when it got to the second one being like, are you serious? Okay. Surely you're not going to do it to me again.
yeah, um, ah man, Wes was fucking great, wasn't he?
Word.
Wasn't
Big
he
time.
great? What a
Mm-hmm.
fucking that guy could fucking direct the fuck out of a movie. And as I said to Pete, oh man, there were some beautiful moments during Scream 4 when I would explain to Pete, I would try and put the movie into context in the horror genre to him. Only like for seconds later, one of the characters on screen to literally repeat exactly what I
Right.
said, like in a condescending way, making me look like a fucking nerd.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. You
people are going to
asshole.
overanalyze this, aren't they? Well, I'm overanalyzing it to Peter to my left. You know what I mean? Fantastic. That
Incredible.
film
Yeah.
within a film within a film within a film within a film, really put me right in to Elm Street 4,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where there are loads of bits where there's dream within a dream within a dream within a dream bits.
Yeah.
So it's it. I was not prepared for how good Scream 4 is.
Yeah.
It's a fucking
And I
great
thought
movie.
you'd feel that way. I'm curious, like when you and Pete get to 6,
Yeah.
if at all you reevaluate that, because I feel like 4 is important in
Yes.
that step to 6, where it's like 6 when you watch it without 4. I can see what you're getting about the like this is just it, sucking its own dick or whatever.
Mm,
But I feel like when you're sort of getting that framework of what they're doing within it, it becomes at least marginally less obnoxious.
yeah.
But now what we have is like, because at the time basically you'd watched 1, 5, and 6 essentially, at least in enough recent history that you had any concept of them.
Yes. Yes.
And 6 irritated you so much that you'd kind of thrown all of it out, which now at this point, and you liked 5, which we've talked about. You
Yeah.
enjoyed 5. So what
Yeah.
we have here is that you like a lot for sure, like 1 and
Right
4
now, the
you liked
averages are
2.
balancing out in its favor.
Yeah. 3 you thought was fine.
And
You liked
again, it
5.
it it mirrors Elm
And
Street in that,
yeah.
the way I put it to you, talk about a fucking mid-franchise revitalization of what
Mm-hmm.
Scream is as a property. Elm Street did exactly. Obviously, Wes wasn't heavily involved in 3 and 4, but they really fucking came out punching. They really came out swinging those two entries.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was delighted, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
There was no element of fuck, it's good. I was wrong. There
Right.
wasn't any of
That's the
that. It was
thing. Yeah.
just
You're
joy.
like, oh my God. No, this is, yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't like text me like with a like, ah, crap. It was like, you're
Nah,
like, oh
not
my
at all.
God, that was
Yeah,
insanely good.
superb. I mean, it
uh,
kind of you can sense the passage of time in that movie with
mhm.
how freely it was able to dial up the volume of the kills. There's a lot more
Right.
gore in 4 than there ever than probably in the
Yeah.
first 3 put together, like entrails and fucking neck wounds and shit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's smart as fuck. I simply loved it. I had no clue who the ghost faces would be. No clue.
Yeah, which is yeah, one of the great things about that movie. And as I said, it was so funny that Anna was like, "Oh, it's one of my favorite reveals."
Mm.
Which we won't say because maybe someone hasn't seen it, but
Yeah, yeah.
this came up in my Facebook memories the other day, actually, that I had watched it with my mother a few years ago, and not the most attentive human being in the world. We get to the reveal of the killers, and as in every movie, you've been watching these people through the whole movie.
Right
You've
before
gotten to
your
know
eyes,
them
yes.
quite well, and the person takes off the mask, and my mom goes, "Who the fuck is that?" It's
Excellent.
like,
Excellent. She's been in like
ah.
that killer was in like most scenes of the film. Like he's not even
Right?
like a peripheral character.
Right, exactly. This is not, yeah, someone that like showed up in one scene and you should have been watching closely or anything like that. It's like,
Yeah.
why do I watch movies with you? Good Lord. But yes, I'm just very happy that on the whole, now
Yeah.
watching through
It's
this franchise, it is
unlike
now
you,
tipped in its favor.
unlike you with GIF. It's nice to have my mind changed on this. I was open
By
to
the
it,
way, I just, Googled to make sure that I wasn't lying
You
about
can Google
this.
all you fucking want.
Yeah, but the reason, because I was like, it was because he wanted the GIF sound. In fact, it was the choice of the creator of the GIF image format, Steve Wilhite, and he wanted to echo the American peanut butter brand GIF. So CompuServe employees would often say, choosy developers, choose GIF, which is the slogan of GIF peanut butter.
If anything, that's an even better reason to retcon it. You wanted
Why?
you wanted a
You wanted
ubiquitous
it to
image
sound
format
like
to sound like a peanut butter brand.
yes. Well, also keep in mind at the time it wasn't ubiquitous. Everyone wasn't using this all the time. Only nerds like me who were early
Mm.
adopters of this kind of thing were using it. So they didn't know when they created it that every person on the planet would use GIFs. This is it just got out of their hands.
All right. Best we move on.
Anyways, what else did you watch this week?
A couple of movies on a theme. Have you heard of Omni Loop?
I'd never heard of it until you mentioned it the other day.
And I only downloaded it on a whim, right? It's a 2024 time loop movie. It's got Ao Edibiri in it.
Nice.
Um, and it's lovely. It's peaceful. It's a very
Hmm.
calm,
Not
lo-fi.
usually something you associate with time loop movies.
No, 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 no. Uh, there's nothing madcap to it at all. It is like I said, a very calm, very reflective kind of view of the lives you could have led, the people you could have
Hmm.
been, the decisions you didn't make, the paths you could have taken.
Okay.
Uh, Told very much from the female perspective, motherhood versus career, family versus, achievement, air quotes.
Mhm.
Um, it's got quirk to it. It just casually drops huge, kind of sci-fi ideas
Nice.
and just treats them as though they're part of the language of the film, the vocabulary of the film. Just expects you to come along with some pretty big conceits.
Hmm.
Um, and it is lovely. Just leaves you with a uh, man leaves you with feelings.
Okay.
Leaves you
I'm into that.
thinking. Yeah, so I hope you like it. I hope you watch it. I hope you
Yeah,
enjoy
I'll
it, and I
definitely
hope you
check
don't
it
go,
out.
"Oh, that was fucking rubbish." Um,
That does happen sometimes, but it's usually not with things that are like as sincere as something like that.
yeah. Uh, it looks cheap. This is not a big budget movie.
Okay.
It's not, it looks like it was a home
It's
edit,
not
home
everything
shot.
everywhere all at once.
No, it isn't. Which because I was into the theme, I watched right afterwards. The
Nice.
next day, watched everything ever all
So
at once
good.
again. Um, a fucking triumph for me as a parent here. In that I watched it with Peter and Owen, right?
Hmm.
10:13. This is an R-rated film.
Oh yeah, I guess
Pete,
so, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Pete fell asleep within 5 minutes and didn't wake until the end, right? He was gone. Uh,
He's certainly your child.
Owen turns to me after 5 minutes, goes, "Dad, I'm not feeling this." And I'm like, "Whoa, just chill." And by the end, he was, "Dad, this is amazing."
Oh, love
Like,
that.
yeah, uh,
I mean, I think that's how I was when I watched it too. The beginning of it, I was like, I don't know about
yeah,
this. And then
yeah.
it's like
But
you don't remember when you watch it again because you know where it's going. But the first time I saw
yes,
it, I remember not being like totally sold and then being like, oh,
yep. But no, like
much.
a few times throughout, you turn to me, "Dad, this is brilliant." And it
That's
is, and
amazing.
it hit just as hard for me the second time as it did. I think it might be the third time.
I was gonna
Right.
say, is it really only the second time?
The thing with everything ever all at once, right? And if I sound like a dick saying this, fuck it. Maybe I am. I don't care. But
Okay.
it is the feeling is almost indescribable, right? It's a kind of like a killing me softly sort of vibe, right?
Killing Me, like the
That
song?
yeah, that
Okay.
film in the space of like 120, 140 minutes articulates stuff that I've struggled with for
Mm-hmm.
20 years.
Sure.
It's as though it reached fucking into me and pulled out my fucking fears and worries about life being pointless
Right.
and just laid it all out in the most brilliantly inventive and funny and engaging way. I
Yeah.
have the deepest connection with that film. It is perfect. It is just brilliant.
Yeah. Agreed.
Uh,
I can, yeah, I have nothing more than I could add to that. You're spot on. By the way,
mm,
though, you should see my dog, the shadow of my dog
looks
back
like he's
there.
shitting.
He's not. There's like a whole bunch of kids playing outside, and he is having the time of his life watching the children play.
Oh, do you know he must be so happy that you came and got him.
I like to think so, like
Yeah,
he does so many, like he's a cuddler. He's always sleeping on his back with his tummy up, which the internet always says means that they're like completely comfortable because in the wild you wouldn't do that because you might get attacked. So
yeah.
when a
He
dog
feels
bares
safe.
their belly, it means they're like completely safe. He seems to just, in whatever way a dog can love, he seems to love us. And I'm like, I hope you're really glad that we rescued you. There's also that thing like, whenever you get a dog, you're separating them from their litter.
Of course.
And there's like always this little part of me that's like, oh no, that's very sad. But dogs are fine with it. This is like a human thing to be worried about that. But like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth being separated from Kiwi and Apple and Blackberry to come
Mm.
and be our dog.
Yeah, I'm sure he feels that. I'll ask him.
Yeah,
I'll ask him when
when
I
you
see him
get here, you
this
can
week.
have a heart to heart with the dog about
Yes,
how he feels about being our
I
dog.
will. Let's
I
see
watched
what else. Go on.
last week we watched The Dark Half.
Mm.
And as I've said a million times on here, I've been in just jonesing for 90s horror. And I love like a 90s horror miniseries.
Mm.
And so the other day I revisited Stephen King's Storm of the Century, which was a 1999 miniseries. Have you not seen this one?
I have not.
Well.
Mm.
Storm of the Century is about a town that is about to be hit by an incredible, you know, world-ending kind of storm, essentially, that threatens to wipe them out. And amidst this happening, this figure shows up who is like he starts by like murder the first you meet him he murders an old woman, and he has this like little rhyme about sin or whatever, and over the
Uh,
course of this movie people start like killing themselves with a message, written in like red on walls and things like that that say like give me what I want and this ends or whatever, and it seems to
okay.
revolve around this figure who has come to town. And it's 3 episodes, and um the first two are kind of, them out and about trying to figure out like what's going on, figuring out that this guy is evil and not just some like weirdo that came and murdered a lady and all that stuff. And the last episode is like this very tense, almost courtroom drama-esque thing that's like a huge, highly escalating town meeting. And it is just, I mean, it's well acted, it's tense, it's bleak as fuck. And yeah,
Nice.
it was a good time. Storm of the Century is on Hulu over here.
Is
I
it
don't know if
recent?
it's no 99.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. I remember watching it when it came out, when I was in middle school or whatever, like 14 years old when this came out, and enjoying it at the time. Tim Daly is the lead in it, and it's got a lot of people that you would recognize, a lot of that guys and and all that stuff. But yeah, it was a fun little thing to watch while I was, getting the house ready, prepping things, vacuuming, all kinds of stuff like that.
Mm.
Fun little watch.
Nice. There's a lot of TV at the minute, so I probably won't get to it
Yeah.
until after Penguin and Agatha are done, both
Mm.
of which have started strong.
Yeah, I haven't watched Penguin, but I did last night. We broke out the the projector and an
Yeah,
inflatable screen to test it
yeah.
out, and I was like, let's watch Agatha. So we watched the first 2 episodes of
That
that.
second
Had a
episode
lot
is
of fun.
great. That first episode is great. The True Detective
Yeah.
opening is
It was funny because like my brain wasn't with it at all, and Keo caught it right out the gate, like with the opening. I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was going to be like a procedural or whatever. He's like,
I was
oh, it's not
exactly the
going to
same.
be.
I was
He's like,
exactly the same. It took me a while to. I think it was only
yeah.
like the credits really
Yeah,
pushed
where
me
it
over the
said like
edge.
based on the Danish
Yeah,
show,
one's your
WandaVision spelled
vision.
funny.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was like immediately I was like, oh, I didn't know this was gonna be a procedural. He's like, it's not going to be. It's gonna be like Wanda. I was like, oh,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I see.
And that musical number in the second episode is fucking
It's
great,
great.
isn't
And
it?
Kitty from that '70s show being hilarious in that whole scene
Yes,
is just delightful. Am I
yes,
supposed to know
wonderful.
this song?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
Penguin starts equally as strong. It's
Great.
as you'd expect, way more violent and profane
Yeah, is that
than
a Max show? What does that come from? Do you know?
yeah, it's
Obviously,
HBO.
okay, yeah. It's like I'm
Um,
sure you stole it, but
so
uh,
yes, killings and swearing abound.
mhm.
But Jesus, man, Colin Farrell is so good.
Of course he is. I
Just
love
he
Colin
just
Farrell.
disappears, man. You know what I mean? It's
In more ways than one, because
well, yeah,
still, how is that Colin Farrell?
insane. Amazing what you can achieve
I'm
with
usually
like
so good at
8 pounds of
spotting.
rubber. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm usually
but
so
he's
good at
not there. It's
spotting
not
people under that, but there is no Colin Farrell there.
none at all. Oh, it's wonderful. I can't. I hate and love that it's weekly because I would have watched it
Mhm.
all by now. It's superb.
Yeah, yeah. I have such a love-hate thing with weekly because I do enjoy watching something week by week, but that is a higher chance that I forget I'm watching it.
Mm.
So, that's the
Which
rub.
you, which is the right way?
Either binge or watch weekly.
Mm.
I prefer weekly. I'm not a huge binger. I don't like to watch a ton of things at once. Like,
No, same. I on that we
yeah.
agree. Yeah, I can't. I can only one book, one show. I can't do more
Yeah.
than one thing at a time.
So I tend to like I have a few shows, usually like sitcoms like Ghosts and stuff like that I watch weekly and I enjoy
Mm.
that. It's very hard for me to like have stuff that I'm going to watch all 10 episodes at one time or something like that. Like that's usually I get overwhelmed and I stop watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless it's something like, the appointment television that is everything Mike Flanagan puts out. But I mean those come out weekly, so there is that. But I have binged those as well.
Um, I think he's got a segment in the new VHS.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I saw a little review of this on social media earlier, by all accounts. I mean, obviously you're predisposed to hate it. Um,
Yes, this is true. I mean, but
but
they've never had someone as huge as Mike Flanagan in one of these.
no, he's not directing. Justin Long has a section.
That he's directing?
Yep. Kate Siegel has a section.
Oh, that's probably why you were thinking Mike
There you
Flanagan, because
go.
it's Kate Siegel.
Yes. I'm sure he
His
has
wife has a
something to do with
section.
it though. If he's not in it or is he co-written, I don't know. I'll have to take a look. But
Well, yeah, he and Kate Siegel do often co-write
yeah,
things. I would I would watch. Ugh, it's hard for me to even say that I hate those movies so much.
I know you do. I know it's hilarious to me.
It's like, I mean, I think the thing is, like, my loathing is really only for the first one because I hate that fucking rapey nonsense that is that entire movie. The other ones I just think are bad.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like that's more the like the balance of good segment to bad segment is like leans way too far bad in all the other
yeah,
ones. So it's really the only the first one that I'm like, this is irredeemable shit. The rest of them is more just like, just on balance, I don't have a good time with them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll give it a whirl. I like Justin Long. I like Kate Siegel.
Oh,
I'll
speaking of
try.
rapey nonsense, I did watch Blink twice.
Oh, fuck me. What
Mm,
the fuck was that?
mm.
I a movie that they had to later add a trigger warning to because it has such graphic rape in it that you don't expect from the rest of the content of this movie that people
Yeah,
went and
yeah,
were horrified
yeah.
when they went and saw it. FYI, if you're thinking of watching Blink twice, all of a sudden,
It
tons
really
of
does
rape
just come out of nowhere.
out
Yeah,
of nowhere. Like, and it's not that like like you could see, like, obviously there's going to be a twist coming in this or whatever, and the idea that it might be something like that is not outside the realm of something you'd predict, but that the way that it's shown is honestly reprehensible. Like,
Mm.
I I could not believe the way that she chose to direct the rape
Depict. Mm.
in this. It's truly horrifying and triggering, and a lot of people have said it better than me in letterboxed reviews and things like that, but just sort of the ways in which like a privileged rich person depicts this kind of stuff, having been insulated from it, and the choice of resolution for it.
That was exactly what I was about to say. The ending of the
Right.
film is,
Is
yeah,
it's like I don't
yeah.
want to
I
give it
yeah.
away, like,
I can't articulate it. It's
but it's so, you'll get to the end of this. I don't recommend you watch Blink twice, like, honestly, but if you watch it and you get to the resolution of this movie and you aren't sitting there going, "Are you fucking serious?" then you
yeah,
need to reevaluate, because truly atrocious way to end a film.
yeah. And it's. Are you trying to tank your career, Channing?
Right.
This isn't the sort of
Seriously.
film you take on if
Uh,
you don't want to do your livelihood harm, you know?
It's interesting though, because I thought this was like one of the most fascinating sort of gender divides of things. It's fairly high rated if you look on Letterboxd, but if you look at the high ratings, it is almost entirely men. And if
Mm,
you look at like the half star, 1 star ones, it's almost entirely women. And this is one of the things that I thought about this movie is I'm like, this is one of those movies that men watch and think that they have just like, like, oh,
sure.
this is the female experience.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
what and by watching this, I'm such a good man. And women are like, what? Like, okay, that's a very cool trauma porn that
Mm,
you have just thrown at me for a movie that like plays out for most of it in a way that feels like it's very much aping like The Menu, Get Out,
oh, completely.
like
Yeah.
it's an I've seen movies kind of thing,
Yes.
and the tone is way too light for what it eventually ends up being, which is trauma porn. Like, no way around that. Oh, I just hated Blink twice with every fiber of
Yeah.
my being.
I would it it's an instant red flag if somebody claims to have enjoyed that film,
Right, exactly. Like,
you know?
big yikes. Super
Yeah.
yikes. I was, when I saw that you'd watched it and your rating on it, I was like, oh, thank God.
Oh, that would have been a podcast ender right there.
Like, God, oh no. It's like, this is not gonna be a good conversation.
Oof, I can imagine
um
that. Eesh.
Anyways, but another thing that we both watched this week that I think we had very good feelings about: Beetlejuice.
Yes. And I was delighted to see you rating it highly.
Oh
It's
my
great.
God, I had such a good time. I was telling
Mm,
Al that during there's a scene in this movie um that sort of references back to the original, but features the song MacArthur Park.
yeah.
And during it, I was having so much fun that we've talked about this before, when you're watching a movie and you're like, this is such a good movie, and you start crying, not because you're sad, but because you're just like,
100% because you're
you know,
connected to it so fucking deeply. Yep.
that scene like made me feel like I felt when I was 5 watching
It's
Beetlejuice, and I
beautiful.
was just like crying. I was like, this
Beautiful.
is very silly, but I'm just like tearing up because I'm having so much fun
Do you know,
watching this movie.
it's so good to hear somebody else having that experience because whenever that happens to me, I kind of feel like a freak.
Right. Yeah, like,
Um,
why am I
it ha
crying? I'm not sad.
right, it
I
happened
just
to
like
me
movies.
like about 4 times during Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right, yeah.
And it happened earlier on today at fucking Avengers Infinity War.
Right, like it's just like it, that
And
moment
not
where you're
not at
just
like
like, this
the
is
sad bits, just like I
right.
was enjoying one of the battles so much, I started tearing up. What the
Right.
fuck?
It's just like, what a joy to be human and get to
Yeah, exactly.
experience
Exactly.
this kind of thing, such a, yeah, I totally understand that feeling, and I had
Oh,
that
that's good.
watching Beetlejuice. Like, like other people have said, like, obviously the ex-wife plot line is totally unnecessary to the movie. It does not
Oh, it
add
is.
anything to it.
But I'll tell you something. Tell you something. I left Beetlejuice after seeing Monica Bellucci, and now I like
And what?
gilfs.
No, I was like, what did you do after seeing Monica Bellucci? And should you be saying it on
I've
here?
graduated from MILFs. Now I like gilfs.
What's a gilf?
Oh, that's a grandma
Oh,
gilf.
okay. Is Monica Bellucci like grandma
She's
aged?
good, mid to late 50s, I think.
I don't know. I mean, you're 45. I don't know if someone
It's
is
could
a gilf when they're like 10 years older than you.
she's 59.
Okay. All right. You're edging that way, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, she's fun. And that character, let me tell you, I've told several parent folks,
Mm,
um, maybe don't take your kids to this because this is more violent and disturbing than the original
yep.
Beetlejuice is. So it's not like the one that we saw when we were kids and we're like, this is great and fine. It's disturbing. And what she does to people in this, like, I think every single time caused me to gasp out loud.
Great, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like, this is, oh, this is horrifying and very gross.
Yeah.
And
Did you
every single time it got
did you
me.
agree with what I said about the pacing and about how it would have been the same film had it been released like the year after the original?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I love about this too is that it is obviously fan servicey, but it doesn't feel so it doesn't feel like fan service. I think it feels more like it's a continuation.
It's expansion
It's
completely.
expansion, right? So of course it's going to have certain things that were in it because it's part of the same universe.
Yeah.
But it really didn't feel so like winky naughty as like most later
Yeah.
sequels do,
Yeah.
where and like you said, where it was like this picks up and it you have to have seen Beetlejuice. It
Oh,
is not,
completely.
yeah, it's not going to go back and remind you of things and the way that other stuff does, where it like just recreates everything over again. It's like, nope, here you go. Let's just jump
Yeah.
right in.
Yeah. Yeah. Like unfortunately, like Alien Romulus.
Which I love,
Of
obviously, but
course.
that
Oh,
absolutely
fucking brilliant.
falls into the wink nod trap.
Yeah.
Like there's no denying that it does that.
Yeah.
And I think largely Beetlejuice, even when it is doing things like the MacArthur Park scene that is reminiscent of the old one, it's so different
Yeah.
from what was done. It's just we know that this is a thing that Beetlejuice is capable of doing because we saw him do it in the last one.
Yeah.
So he's going to do that
Yeah.
here.
It's part of his MO, is what he does. It's
Right.
part of his bag of tricks.
Exactly. There's like a
Um,
difference between like just being like, didn't you love this? And this is the world that we've built. So here you
I
are in it.
I seem to remember thinking that the Soul Train was a little on the nose. That was my only.
It was, but I am such a sucker for like a disco dance scene that like
Fine, fine,
I
fine.
was like, I'm in. I don't care
Yeah.
that that makes zero sense. Like, there's no reason that they should always have a disco party going on when this is carrying souls from place to
None.
place. But you will never find me complaining about a disco dance break in a movie, period. Also, it's
Yes.
the only place that Tim Burton will ever put a black person in a movie. So there's
Also
that.
true. Yep. Sadly, sad but true.
Still not going to be forced to put any black characters in his movies,
No
but we do have Latinos this time. So there is that.
progress.
Walter, he's growling at the record player. So I feel like I could have like a whole Instagram of just what's Walter growling at because it's always something super weird.
He's an MP3 pup.
Like, yeah, just old technology. The other day, I put two paint cans on the stairs because I was going to take them up to paint the bathroom walls. And he was not okay with the intrusion of these cans and just started like barking at them vigorously. And then he kind of got
Right.
like up enough guts to go and sniff them. And then all of a sudden freaked himself out and like ran away real quick. It's like they're literally inanimate objects.
How the fuck is he going to deal with what is about to be visited
Right?
upon him?
Yeah, if paint cans are a problem, we'll see how he does with people. But Walter, he's being ridiculous. Anyways, um, what else?
No, that's pretty much it for me. Apart from the aforementioned Avengers Infinity War.
Right.
Um, the boys are continuing with their watch along, and much like Carlito's Way, and let me see what else. Carlito's Way, any of the Rocky films,
Okay.
or 24 Hours in Police Custody. If I walk in and it's playing, my
Okay.
ass is sitting the fuck down.
I was like, what is the common thread between these
Just
pieces
that
of media?
they have my
Okay.
attention instantly. And I
Sure.
walked in when it had been on for like 15 minutes, and I simply just forgot about the next 2.5 hours and sat down. Uh, and
This
thank
you
God I
said this is
did.
Infinity War?
This was Infinity War, yes, because I don't think it ever got better than that. Endgame was great, but it
Mm,
wasn't as good.
yeah.
Um,
I remember, and I'm sure I've told this before, but that was one of the just such an interesting theater going experience because I went to like huge theater, completely full. Like I think it's the biggest theater in Orange County. It's
mm,
the Newport Big Five or Big Six, something like that. Huge theater, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in there, and everybody's stoked out of their minds to go see this movie and everything. And it's like chaos, and everybody's excited, and there's clapping and cheering and things during parts of the movie, and then it ends, and this just
yeah,
sad
wild.
silence lingering over this
Yep.
auditorium as everyone was just like processing what they had just
Yeah.
experienced.
Yep.
I've never had a movie experience like that
It's
where, the
incredible. As
energy is
a
so high, but there's an energy to the sadness at the end too. There's an
yeah.
energy to
Yeah,
the
you're
quiet.
waiting for it to be put right. Hang on, there's a couple
Yeah,
of minutes left. How the fuck are they gonna
surely
fix
this
this?
is not how this
What?
ends,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
uh,
just in I won't go over old ground with my
mhm,
feelings towards the MCU up to that point. But as a fucking blow off, as every story converging in one
mhm,
ridiculously fucking opulent bit of cinema.
yeah,
It's never. I can't see how you could ever better that as a just a
right.
treat. It is fucking oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great one. Big
And
fan.
2 hours 20 is too long for any film.
True.
But I wouldn't cut a thing. I wouldn't cut a single fucking second from that film. It's
Right.
perfect.
Yeah, totally. I think that is it
I got
then.
nothing else to say
Beautiful.
on
Yeah,
any
nothing
of the matters.
nothing to say until we've met.
Nothing to say until I'm going to say it to your face.
Exactly that. So dear listeners, as always, thank you for coming along on this ride. And
Yep,
many of you we will see in just a few short days. And those of you that we won't, we wish
we really
we were
do.
seeing
I
you.
think next week's episode will be our Infinity War of Joag. It'll be the 4 year fucking journey culminating in
Yep.
a
This is
big
phase
episode of
one
the
or whatever.
podcast.
I guess that's like
Yes,
phase three, I guess, or something like that
yes.
of MCU. But either way, we're just super stoked to hang out with so many wonderful people that we've been hanging out with online, to get Mark here to these United States, to it's never gonna not be funny to me. You suddenly
Podcast reference. Hit my fucking
shoveling
man.
pills into your mouth at the end of the podcast. But yeah, we're super excited to see people. We wish you all could be here and hang out with us, but we will of course be on here next week with our 200th episode with the Hell Rankers, talking Jaws and whatever Mark decides to take us through
Yep.
for our half of the pod. And until then, of course, you have one mandate.
Oh, stay spooky.
Mm.